I never imagined that a single moment, a single discovery could change everything. There I was, preparing for my daughter's wedding, filled with excitement and joy, only to stumble upon a truth so devastating that it shattered the life I thought I knew. My husband, the man I had trusted for years, was hiding a betrayal that would unravel our entire world. This is the story of how I uncovered his secrets, how I found my voice when I thought I had none, and how I turned betrayal into my own moment of reckoning. Stay with me as this story unfolds piece by piece. My husband is in Paris with his lover while I'm at our daughter's wedding. He texted to say he was stuck at a conference and couldn't make it. What he doesn't know is that I'm the one who paid for his trip, and the private investigator is sending me photos from his conference. Tomorrow, his world will collapse. The blue glow of my laptop lit up the quiet of our home office at 2:17 a.m. I hadn't intended to be awake, but the nervous energy for Emma's wedding kept me from sleep. I decided to work on her wedding budget, hoping the mundane task would help me settle back into slumber. That's when I saw it. An email notification flashed across the screen. Thank you for your reservation at El Grand Paris. The confirmation wasn't addressed to me but to Dylan, my husband of 27 years. The same Dylan who had texted hours earlier about a weather delay in Boston, keeping him from his conference registration. I blinked, unsure if I was reading correctly in my sleep-deprived state. The email revealed a 5-night stay in a luxury suite for the entire weekend of our daughter's wedding. A chill crept up my spine. 27 years of marriage had taught me to trust my instincts, and something felt terribly off. It must be spam, I murmured, but the details were too specific to be a mistake. I clicked through to our shared cloud storage, where we kept travel documents. There it was, a folder labelled Boston Conference, containing a flight itinerary. Not to Boston, but to Paris. Before diving deeper, let me invite you into a story of betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming power. If you've ever been underestimated or ignored, Sydney's journey from silent partner to a force to be reckoned with will resonate. Consider subscribing for more stories of transformation. Now, let's see how one discovery can unravel everything. The house suddenly felt suffocating. I opened the window, letting the cool breeze wash over me as I tried to make sense of what I'd just found. Why would Dylan lie about where he was going? More troubling still, how could he plan to miss Emma's wedding, our only daughter's wedding, the event he promised to attend? Unable to let it go, I dove into our company's financial records, something I hadn't reviewed in months. As co-founder of Montgomery Advanced Systems, I had stepped back to focus on wedding preparations, trusting Dylan to manage things in my absence. That trust was shattered as spreadsheet after spreadsheet revealed alarming discrepancies. 6 transfers totaling $3.7 million had been made to an offshore entity called Horizon Holdings in the past month. I'd never heard of this company, yet Dylan's signature was on every transaction. My hands shook as I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. The phone rang, startling me so much I knocked over my cold tea. Frank Winters, our accountant, was calling at 3 a.m., a surefire sign that something had gone terribly wrong. His voice was weak, drained from his cancer treatments, but the news he shared made my stomach drop. Dylan had approached him weeks ago, proposing the sale of our company, my company, the one I had helped build while raising Emma. Frank said Dylan told him I had agreed but wanted to stay out of the negotiations. Then Frank revealed the shocking terms. Dylan was carving out my shares, selling the company without me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A cold clarity washed over me. I spent the rest of the night methodically gathering evidence, taking screenshots, downloading financial records, and compiling them in a secure folder that documented Dylan's deception. By sunrise, shock had turned to resolve. I kept my composure while having breakfast with Emma, who stopped by to discuss wedding flowers. Inside, though, my mind was already calculating my next move. When Emma mentioned her father's video call from Boston, I suggested we turn it into a surprise. I would set it up myself, making it a special moment for them. After Emma left, I made my own call to Diane Chin, a woman I'd met at a business leadership conference years ago. I'd kept her card not for her corporate security expertise, but because she had a background in military intelligence. "I need surveillance in Paris," I told her bluntly. Discreet, immediate, and thorough. Diane didn't ask questions, just told me to send over what I had and she'd handle the rest. For the next 3 days, I lived a double life. To the world, I was the composed mother of the bride, handling last-minute wedding details. Privately, I was building my case against Dylan, reviewing Diane's findings and securing digital evidence before he could figure out what I knew. Each fake text he sent about Boston's weather delays only strengthened my resolve. The night before the rehearsal dinner, as I finalized seating arrangements, Diane's update came through. The photos on my tablet revealed Dylan in Paris, emerging from a hotel in a suit I didn't recognize, sitting at a cafe with men in tailored suits, and then the most telling images of all. Dylan with a woman, tall and elegant, her hand resting on his arm as they entered a restaurant. It didn't take long to identify her as Vivian Lauren, a corporate attorney specializing in international acquisitions. She wasn't just his business partner. She was part of his betrayal. I studied the photos not with jealousy, but with a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about an affair or financial fraud. It was a calculated dismantling of everything we'd built together. I closed the tablet, walked to our bedroom window, and gazed out at the garden where Emma's wedding would take place in just 4 days. 27 years of marriage, 25 years of building our company, 24 years of raising our daughter, all now overshadowed by lies. Yet, as I watched the sunset cast golden light on the garden, something unexpected blossomed within me. Not despair, determination. Dylan believed I was distracted with wedding preparations, unaware that his silent partner had found her voice. Tomorrow, as Emma's rehearsal dinner unfolded perfectly, I would toast to love and loyalty, while secretly continuing to gather my evidence. When Dylan returned, he would find that I had a plan of my own. A plan that would save our company, protect our daughter, and show him exactly who he had underestimated all these years. I picked up my phone and texted him. "We all miss you terribly. Emma is going to be so beautiful. I wish you could be here sooner." I added a heart emoji, smiling for the first time all day. Let him believe I was still unaware. The truth would hit him like a blinding light when the time was right. Morning sunlight filtered through the ivory curtains of Emma's childhood bedroom as I pinned the last pearl into her intricate updo. Outside, wedding vendors bustled across the property, transforming the garden into the fairy tale setting Emma had dreamed of since childhood. "Mum, my hands won't stop shaking," Emma whispered, her reflection meeting mine in the antique vanity mirror we'd refinished together when she was 16. I squeezed her shoulders gently. "That's just all the love inside you trying to escape," I said, my voice tender despite the storm brewing inside me. My phone buzzed on the dresser. Another message from Dylan. I checked it while pretending to adjust Emma's veil. "Flight delayed again. Boston airport chaos. Don't think I'll make it. Have someone record it. So sorry." The lie rose in my throat, a practiced deception. I had already received Diane's morning update an hour earlier, a photo of Dylan having breakfast at his Paris hotel, the newspaper on his table clearly showing today's date. In the background, Vivian Lauren stood by the door. "Dad just texted," I told Emma, keeping my voice steady. "His connections are delayed, but he's trying everything to get here in time." Emma's face dropped for a moment, but she quickly squared her shoulders. "At least we'll have the video call for the dance. That was genius, Mom." "Yes," I said, kissing her forehead. "Technology can be such a blessing sometimes." Between final makeup touches and the bridesmaid's champagne toast, I slipped into my study to upload another batch of financial documents to my secure cloud. My fingers moved swiftly, tagging files that exposed Dylan's systematic dismantling of our company's ownership structure. 3 board members had confirmed their discreet attendance at tonight's reception. Old friends who had invested in our startup decades ago. Dylan believed they would support whatever decision he made, but he was about to be sorely mistaken. A crisis with the flower arrangements pulled me back to wedding duties, but through it all, the photographer's arrival, guests gathering in the garden, the string quartet beginning their prelude, I maintained the facade of a joyful mother. No one could see the warrior beneath, executing a plan while my daughter celebrated her marriage as mine, unravelled in secret. Sydney. My sister Claire rushed toward me, panic in her eyes. The officiant's car broke down on the highway. For a moment, the wedding chaos provided a welcome distraction from my private battle. I calmed Claire, called our family attorney, who was also a licensed officiant, and resolved the crisis without Emma ever knowing. Crisis management had always been my specialty, and that skill would serve me well in the days ahead. The ceremony passed in a blur of beauty and emotion, emotions that were no less real for the deception happening in parallel. My tears watching Emma walk down the aisle on Michael's arm, a last-minute stand-in for her delayed father, were genuine. Emma deserved this perfect day, and nothing, not even her father's betrayal, would taint it. As the reception began, the sunset painted the sky in hues of amber and rose. I had scheduled Dylan's surprise video call during what would have been the father-daughter dance. Emma stood in the centre of the dance floor, radiant in her gown, as I positioned my tablet at just the right angle. When Dylan's face appeared on the screen, the garden fell silent. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Daddy, I wish you were here," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm there in spirit, Princess," Dylan replied, his performance flawless. "Dance with me anyway." As the music began and Emma swayed with the tablet in her arms, I circled them slowly, my phone recording what appeared to be a touching moment. But I wasn't capturing the dance. I was documenting the Eiffel Tower clearly visible through Dylan's hotel window, a landmark impossible to see from any Boston location. Throughout the reception, I danced between celebrations and conspiracies with practiced grace. While Emma cut the cake, I slipped away to meet with James Hamilton, our first investor and current board chair. "These documents are legitimate?" he asked, his face grim as he scrolled through my evidence in a quiet corner of the house. "Every file," I confirmed. "Dylan is selling 25 years of our work without authorization or board approval. The deal closes Monday." "Not anymore," James replied, his loyalty to me clear. "I'll speak with the others tonight, discreetly." My moment came during the traditional speeches. Standing before our gathered loved ones, champagne flute in hand, I delivered words that moved the crowd to tears. "Marriage, like any worthwhile venture, thrives on equal partnership," I began, my gaze fixed directly on Emma and her new husband. "It requires transparency, honesty, and the courage to face difficult truths together." My speech wove memories of Emma's childhood with wisdom about lasting relationships, but beneath the touching anecdotes lay carefully crafted phrases that only Dylan would understand. References to our early business struggles, promises we had made when founding Montgomery Advanced Systems, coded warnings in the language of our shared history. "Remember, darling," I said, raising my glass to Emma, though my words were aimed elsewhere. "The strongest foundations are built on truth. Without it, even the most beautiful structures eventually collapse." As dancing resumed and the celebration reached its peak, I retreated to my makeshift command center in the pool house, here with one eye on security cameras showing the jubilant reception. I completed my most critical task. My fingers flew across the keyboard, transferring proprietary algorithms and encryption keys to servers that required my personal authentication, systems Dylan had forgotten existed from our company's early days. "Mrs. Montgomery, the target is preparing to leave his Paris location." Looks like he's headed to the airport. Perfect timing, I replied, initiating the final protocol that would lock Dylan out of our most valuable intellectual property. He would be landing to quite a surprise. The screen confirmed the transfer was complete just as fireworks exploded overhead, celebrating Emma's marriage. The synchronicity wasn't lost on me, light and colour blazing through the darkness, marking both endings and beginnings. I rejoined the party, accepting congratulations and hugging my radiant daughter as she prepared to leave for her honeymoon. No one saw the steel beneath my smile, the calculated precision with which I'd executed both a perfect wedding and the first phase of Dylan's reckoning. Emma hugged me fiercely before departing. Thank you for making today perfect, Mum. I just wish Dad could have been here. He made his choices, sweetheart, I said softly, the double meaning hidden in plain sight. But don't worry, I'll make sure he understands exactly what he missed today. As their car disappeared down the driveway, guests waving sparklers in farewell, I checked my watch. Dylan would be boarding his flight home soon, believing he was returning to a wife distracted by wedding afterglow and unaware of his betrayal. He had no idea what awaited him, or that today's celebration marked not just my daughter's new beginning, but mine as well. The house fell silent in the aftermath of the wedding. The caterers had cleared away the last champagne flutes, the rented chairs were stacked and gone, and even the fairy lights had been unplugged. Only the memory of celebration lingered in the air. I hadn't slept, but exhaustion was a luxury I couldn't afford. At 7:30 a.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Margot Finch, Emma's former college roommate and now head of cybersecurity at a Silicon Valley firm, arrived right on time, looking fresh despite the early hour. Thanks for coming on such short notice, I said, leading her to our home office. I know it's the day after the wedding, but with Dylan away and the office quiet, it seemed like the perfect time for the system updates we've been putting off. Margot set down her laptop bag and eyed the coffee I'd prepared. Mrs. Montgomery, you just pulled off the wedding of the century. I should be thanking you for the consulting gig. Besides, Emma would kill me if I didn't help her mom. If only she knew the real reason I'd called her. As Margot began her work, I watched her fingers fly across the keyboard, systematically reviewing our company's security architecture. She believed she was performing routine maintenance, strengthening firewalls, updating authentication protocols, patching potential vulnerabilities. In truth, she was building my fortress. Your current security is pretty robust, she noted, but these new protocols will require multi-factor authentication for any major system changes or data transfers. No one, not even Dylan, will be able to make significant alterations without your approval. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Better safe than sorry in today's digital landscape. While Margot worked, I retreated to the kitchen table with my laptop, drafting a series of emails to our most valuable clients. Each message appeared innocent enough. Updates on current projects, inquiries about satisfaction levels, and subtle mentions of our company's long-term stability plans. Between the lines, however, I planted carefully worded phrases. As we continue our commitment to remain a privately held American company, our dedication to maintaining current leadership and vision remains unwavering. While the market buzzes with acquisition rumors, we remain focused on organic growth. By noon, I'd sent 17 tailored messages to clients who collectively represented 73% of our annual revenue. The responses began arriving almost immediately: concern, confusion, and requests for clarification about rumors they had heard. Each reply confirmed what I suspected. Dylan had already begun preparing our client base for the ownership transition without my knowledge. All done in here, Margot called from the office. Want me to walk you through the changes? I joined her for a thorough briefing, memorizing the new security protocols that would soon become my armor. After she left, promising to send her invoice to our accounting department, I turned my attention to our personal finances. The discovery hit harder than expected. Our joint accounts showed steady withdrawals over the past 8 months. Nothing large enough to trigger my attention during the wedding planning distraction, but substantial in aggregate. Following the digital trail led me to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Switzerland. Dylan had meticulously constructed a financial escape route, transferring nearly 60% of our personal wealth to accounts under his sole control. I leaned back in my chair, a curious calm washing over me. This wasn't just business betrayal or infidelity. This was calculated abandonment, the dismantling of our entire shared life. My phone rang, displaying an international number I didn't recognize. "Sydney Montgomery," I answered, keeping my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions within. "Mrs. Montgomery, this is Marcel Lauren," a thick French accent said, the voice tense. "You don't know me, but I believe we have a mutual situation." My breath caught. "Lauren? As in Vivian Lauren? My estranged wife?" "Yes, I understand she's been spending time with your husband in Paris," he continued. I moved to the window, scanning the empty driveway out of habit. "How did you get my number, Mr. Lauren?" "I'm a financial journalist. Finding information is what I do," he said. "And I have information you might find valuable." Marcel explained he'd been tracking Vivian's activities since their separation 6 months ago. She had a pattern, he said, targeting married executives involved in major acquisitions, positioning herself as both legal counsel and romantic interest. The relationships inevitably collapsed after deals closed, but not before she secured substantial consultation fees and personal gifts that somehow evaded tax scrutiny. "I can send you everything I've documented," Marcel offered. "Bank transfers, hotel records, text message transcripts from our shared cloud account. She forgot to remove me from the account. Consider it a professional courtesy from one betrayed spouse to another." "Why help me?" I asked, suspicion threading through my gratitude. "What do you gain?" I heard his bitter laugh, crossing the Atlantic. "Let's just say I've learned that revenge is a dish best served with documented evidence and public exposure. Your husband isn't her first, but perhaps you can ensure he's her last." After our call ended, Marcel's files began arriving in my encrypted email, damning evidence of the playbook Vivian had executed 3 times before with other executives. The final piece of my puzzle slid into place. I spent the afternoon in calculated productivity, scheduling an emergency company-wide meeting for 9 a.m., Monday, precisely 2 hours after Dylan's flight was scheduled to land. The official agenda cited urgent quarterly projections review and strategic planning, but my true purpose remained hidden behind corporate jargon. By evening, I'd received confirmation from 6 board members who would attend in person rather than via conference call. An unusual response that Dylan would have noticed, had he not been 3,500 miles away, distracted by Vivian and his imagined triumph. As darkness fell, I methodically prepared our home for Dylan's return. I moved his personal items from our bedroom to the guest room, printed selected photographs from Diane's surveillance, and placed them in a folder on his desk. I changed the access codes to our home security system, programming in a temporary code that would allow him entry just once. The final touch was a call to our executive assistant, Patricia, who had been with us since the company's founding. "Patricia, it's Sydney. I have a delicate matter to discuss." Her loyalty had never been in question. She was the first person I'd hired when we expanded beyond our garage startup, and the only staff member who had a company ownership stake besides Dylan and myself. "The rumors are true," I told her. "Dylan has been attempting to sell the company without board approval or my consent. I need your help tomorrow." Patricia's gasp was followed by steely determination. "Just tell me what you need, Sydney." We spent an hour coordinating tomorrow's meeting logistics. Who would sit where, which documents would be distributed, how security would handle access to the executive floor. Patricia had always excelled at battlefield strategy disguised as administrative efficiency. As midnight approached, I stood in our garden, where just 24 hours earlier, Emma had danced surrounded by love and celebration. How quickly life could transform. wedding flowers still fragrant in vases throughout the house, while I prepared for corporate warfare. My phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. "Landing tomorrow 7:05 a.m. Can't wait to see you and hear about the wedding. Love you." The casual deception, the easy endearment, it should have hurt. Instead, it crystallized my resolve. I typed back a response that would give him no reason for suspicion. "Safe travels. We have lots to catch up on." I looked up at the stars, drawing strength from their distant light. Tomorrow, Dylan would return to the life he thought he controlled, to the wife he believed he had deceived. He had no idea he was walking into a reckoning of my design. I was no longer just Sydney Montgomery, the silent partner. I had become the architect of accountability, and my blueprint was flawless. Dawn broke, and my phone notified me that Dylan's plane had landed, 10 minutes early. I'd been awake for hours already, methodically transforming our home for his return. The space that had witnessed 27 years of our marriage now felt unrecognizable. In our home office, I removed the last family photo from the wall, Emma's college graduation, the three of us beaming with genuine pride. I carefully placed it in a box with the others, then hung in its place an enlarged image of Dylan entering the Paris hotel with Vivian, her hand possessively resting on his arm. Beside it, I pinned financial statements highlighting the unauthorized transfers, each one bearing his digital signature. The formal notice from the board, drafted overnight and signed by 6 members, took center stage above his desk. Its legal language was stark and unambiguous. The sale was blocked. My phone rang. "He's in a taxi," Diane reported. 20 minutes from your location. And our other targets, the French investment team, checked into the Grand Metropolitan 30 minutes ago. They're expecting to meet with Dylan at 11. I checked my watch. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. I surveyed the transformation of the house one final time. Every room contained strategically placed evidence, documentation of his betrayal, arranged with almost artistic precision. This wasn't just confrontation, it was installation art with a purpose. The drive downtown felt surreal. Morning commuters surrounded me, unaware of the corporate coup unfolding in their midst. I parked at the Grand Metropolitan and asked for Jean-Claude Moreau at the front desk, using the name Diane had confirmed as the lead investor. "Mrs. Montgomery," the silver-haired Frenchman greeted me in the hotel's conference room, his initial confusion quickly masked by professional courtesy. "We were expecting your husband." "I'm sure you were," I replied, placing my portfolio on the table. "But as co-founder and equal owner of Montgomery Advanced Systems, I believe I'm better positioned to discuss its future." His colleagues exchanged glances as I removed the first document, my marriage certificate, followed by our company's founding papers, showing my 50% ownership. "Gentlemen, I'll be direct. My husband has attempted to sell you something he doesn't fully own, without board approval or my consent. That alone voids any potential agreement." I slid forward a copy of the board's notice. "But there's more you should know before you invest 230 million euros in what would ultimately be an invalid transaction." For 20 minutes, I methodically outlined the technological vulnerabilities Dylan had concealed during their due diligence, security flaws in our newest platform that would require millions to correct patent challenges on 2 key components, and regulatory hurdles he had deliberately minimized. "We were not made aware of these issues," Moreau said tightly, signaling to his team to take notes. "Nor were you," I added, sliding forward Marcel Laurent's dossier on Vivian and her pattern of compromising acquisition deals. "Your legal representative has a concerning history." The mood in the room shifted palpably. These weren't just businessmen, they were investors with reputations at stake. By the time I stood to leave 30 minutes later, they were already on phones with their legal department in Paris. "Mrs. Montgomery," Moreau called as I reached the door. "What exactly do you want?" I turned, meeting his gaze directly. "I want what's mine, Mr. Moreau. Nothing more, nothing less." As my car pulled away from the hotel, I made the call I'd been planning for days. "Patricia, Execute the press release now. At precisely 9:47 a.m., as Dylan's taxi turned onto our street, the announcement hit the business wires. Montgomery Advanced Systems announces leadership restructuring. Co-founder Sydney Montgomery assumes CEO role. I watched from the window as Dylan's phone must have erupted with notifications. He visibly stiffened in the back seat of the taxi, his head bowed over the screen. I could almost see the frantic scrolling, the dawning realization that his carefully constructed plans were crumbling in real time. His first call came before he even reached the front door. I watched on my tablet as he tried to access his executive email, only to receive an automatic notification that his credentials had been temporarily suspended pending security review. His second call went to the CFO, who, as instructed, directed him to the emergency board meeting already in progress. His third call went to Vivian. I couldn't track that one, but his expression as he ended it told me everything I needed to know. I positioned myself in the living room, seated calmly on the sofa, with contract documents spread before me. The sound of his key in the lock echoed through the house, followed by the security system's automated voice. One-time access code accepted. Dylan stepped into the foyer, his designer luggage abandoned just inside the door as he took in the transformed space. His eyes darted from the surveillance photos lining the entryway to the financial statements mounted on the living room walls. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice filled with shock. I looked up as if just noticing his arrival. "Welcome home, Dylan. How was Paris?" The calmness in my voice surprised even me. "Sydney, whatever you think is happening, isn't happening," he said, moving toward me with his hands spread in supplication. "The market is changing. The company needed this deal to survive. I was protecting our future." I asked quietly. "By transferring millions to accounts I couldn't access? By sleeping with the attorney negotiating against us?" His expression hardened. "You've been so wrapped up in Emma's wedding, you haven't seen what's happening in our industry. We're falling behind. This acquisition was our golden parachute." "Our company has record profits this quarter," I countered, sliding forward the financial reports he thought I hadn't seen. "The acquisition wasn't a lifeboat, Dylan. It was your exit strategy at my expense." Dylan's composure cracked. "You've always been holding me back, playing the beautiful wife while secretly undermining my vision. The company could be twice what it is if you hadn't insisted on your cautious approach." "And yet," I noted, rising to face him directly, "that cautious approach built the security protocols that just locked you out of your own systems." "This isn't just about us, Dylan," I continued. "It's about Emma's inheritance, the legacy we promised to build for her. It's about the 312 employees whose livelihoods you were gambling with." His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, a strategy. Finding none, his desperation turned to rage. "You won't get away with this. The board has seen everything." I interrupted, my voice quiet but firm. "The offshore accounts, the falsified projections, the manipulated client contracts, your signature on papers you never showed me." "I'm not done, Dylan." I stepped closer, meeting his gaze. "You taught me something important over these 27 years, Dylan. You taught me to always read the fine print. And the fine print in our company bylaws states that fraud by any officer triggers an automatic leadership review." Dylan's phone buzzed with incoming calls that he ignored. His face went pale as the full extent of his situation dawned on him. "I trusted you," I said softly, "with my heart, my company, our daughter's future. You weren't just betraying a business partner. You were dismantling our entire shared life." For the first time, I saw something genuine in his eyes. Not remorse for his actions, but shock at being caught, at being outmaneuvered by the woman he had so completely underestimated. "What happens now?" he finally asked, his voice barely audible. I glanced at my watch. "Now, we have a board meeting to attend." After that, I met his eyes one final time. "That depends entirely on how much more of our shared legacy you're willing to destroy." With over 25 years of industry awards on display, today's meeting felt like a courtroom. 8 board members sat upright, their faces ranging from disbelief to barely contained fury as I calmly presented the evidence projected onto the screen. Dylan sat across from me, his earlier bravado now deflated with each damning slide. As you can see from these communications, I continued, advancing to an email thread between Dylan and Vivian. The sale was deliberately hidden from both the board and myself, despite our fiduciary obligation for dual executive approval on any ownership changes. James Hamilton, our longest-serving board member, removed his glasses with deliberate slowness. Dylan, would you like to respond to these accusations? Dylan leaned forward, flipping his charm switch to full throttle. This is being completely misrepresented. Sydney found preliminary talks and jumped to conclusions. Yes, I explored options without immediately informing anyone, but that was just to gauge market interest before presenting a formal proposal. Preliminary discussions don't typically include signed letters of intent, I countered, displaying a document bearing his signature, or the transfer of proprietary algorithms to third parties for evaluation. The room fell silent as board members examined the technical schematics Dylan had shared with French investors, intellectual property worth millions in development costs. This constitutes corporate espionage, said Victoria Reeves, our newest board member and a former federal prosecutor. These actions have exposed the company to considerable liability. The meeting continued for 2 more hours, with my meticulous evidence being met by Dylan's increasingly desperate explanations. When the board called for a short recess, Dylan approached me near the water cooler, his voice low and urgent. "Sydney, we can fix this together," he said, his hand reaching for mine, just as he had done countless times during our marriage. "We built this company from the ground up. We can rebuild our marriage too." I stepped back, creating distance. "I already have the company," I said coldly, "and I have no interest in rebuilding something that was nothing more than an illusion." When the board reconvened, their decision was unanimous. Dylan would be removed as CEO, effective immediately, and I would assume full executive control during the transition. As the boardroom emptied, I remained seated, calmly arranging papers while Dylan stood frozen by the door. "You'll hear from my attorneys," he said at last, his threat empty, one we both recognized. "Actually, you'll hear from mine first," I replied, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "Divorce papers, already filed." Dylan stared at the envelope without touching it. "You'll notice the terms are more than fair," I continued. "You'll retain your original founder's shares, although you're removed from operations. You keep the vacation house in Aspen and your retirement accounts remain untouched." I met his eyes. "A more generous settlement than you planned for me." "Why would you do this?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Not for you," I said firmly. "For Emma. Despite everything, she loves her father, and I won't make her choose sides in a scorched earth divorce. You've already taken enough from her by missing her wedding. I won't take her father too." 3 days later, Emma's honeymoon ended with her return to a transformed family. After she and her husband were settled in their new apartment, I invited her to lunch. In the privacy of an upscale cafe, I carefully explained what had happened: the planned sale, the financial deception, and the real reason Dylan had missed her wedding. He had been in Paris with another woman. Her voice cracked slightly when she repeated, "He was in Paris with another woman." "Yes," I said simply, offering the truth without embellishment. Emma stared at her untouched tea. "So, you're getting divorced?" "We are," I replied. Her posture straightened, an echo of me, and it took me by surprise. "I need to talk to Dad, hear his side," she said, her resolve firm. "I would expect nothing less," I said, reaching for her hand. "And whatever relationship you choose to have with him moving forward is yours to define. I won't interfere." 2 weeks after Dylan moved out, I held the first company-wide meeting under my leadership. 400 employees gathered in the atrium, uncertainty evident in their body language. "Many of you have heard rumours," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the space. "Some of it is true, some exaggerated. Today, I want to speak directly about our path forward." For the next hour, I laid out my vision for the future of the company, a restructuring that emphasized innovation, collaboration, and the recognition of overlooked talent. Patricia, my loyal assistant, was promoted to Chief of Staff, while Mark Chin, a brilliant engineer whose ideas had been sidelined under Dylan, was appointed head of our new Advanced Research Division. This company was built on the principle that the best ideas can come from anywhere, I told them. We're returning to that foundation while building something stronger, more transparent, and more inclusive. In the weeks that followed, I worked 18-hour days reimagining the company culture. I replaced the executive boardroom's imposing table with a circular one to eliminate hierarchical seating. I introduced a bi-weekly innovation forum where employees from any department could pitch ideas directly to leadership. I reviewed salaries across departments, addressing imbalances that had primarily affected female employees. Through this difficult process, I found purpose, even in the painful aftermath of betrayal. Each night, I returned to a home that had once been shared with Dylan but was now being redefined as mine. The master bedroom became a sanctuary of blues and greys, far from the earth tones Dylan had preferred. The home office transformed into a creative studio where I could sketch product designs just as I had in the company's early days. Emma visited weekly, navigating her relationship with both parents with a grace that filled me with pride. She stayed in touch with her father but made her disappointment clear. "He's trying to explain it all away," she told me one evening. "But I keep thinking about that video call during the wedding, seeing the Eiffel Tower in his window while he pretended to be in Boston." "People make mistakes," I said carefully, "even terrible ones." She looked at me with those perceptive eyes. "How are you not furious all the time?" "Who says I'm not?" I replied with a slight smile. "But anger won't restore what was taken. Only I can do that." 6 months after the wedding weekend, Montgomery Advanced Systems celebrated its 25th anniversary in the Grand Metropolitan Ballroom, the same hotel where I had confronted the French investors. Hundreds of employees, clients, and industry leaders gathered for the occasion. I stood at the podium in a silk dress in the company's signature blue, a delicate Parisian scarf draped around my shoulders, a souvenir from my first solo international business trip, during which I secured our largest European contract to date. 25 years ago, a company was born in a garage with nothing but ambition and the belief in making technology more accessible, I began, gazing out at the sea of faces. Today, we honor that legacy while embracing a future limited only by our imagination and courage. As champagne glasses were raised in a toast, I caught sight of my reflection in the ballroom's mirrored wall. Not the silent partner, not defined by my marriage, but standing firm in my reclaimed identity. Sydney Montgomery, architect of her own rebirth.